Welcome everybody to Tropical Weather Update. It is around 10 a.m. Eastern Time on October the 6th, Sunday, and this is an update related to Tropical Storm Milton, soon to be Hurricane Milton, which by Wednesday will be threatening the west coast of Florida as potentially a major hurricane. So this is important information. Please share this with any relatives you have that live along the west coast of Florida. I'm sure they probably are aware of this by now. Right now you're seeing the infrared clean long wave satellite presentation. The storm's just starting to get its act together. By later today it should become a hurricane and it'll look a lot better than it does on the satellite presentation right now. So let's go right to the National Hurricane Center's forecast track. As you can see, the cone of uncertainty shows a landfall somewhere from around the Perry area, Fish Creek, all the way down to Naples. But as you will see on the model forecast, really it's anywhere, really the Tampa Bay area is the most likely landfall point for this storm, unfortunately. So this could be a very catastrophic situation for Tampa Bay, especially if it makes landfall a little north of Tampa, with the storm surge that this storm will create as a result of it getting pretty strong in the middle of the Gulf of Mexico. As you can see, it shows an M by Tuesday. That's a major hurricane of Category 3 or higher intensity. And if you look at the intensity forecast, that is consistent within 48 hours, which would be by Tuesday. Some of the models show this as a strong Cat 5 hurricane. But fortunately, by the time it will make landfall, around 84 to 96 hours, most of the models show it between tropical storm and Cat 3 status. So that means the storm will be weakening upon its approach to the west coast of Florida. That being said, because of the storm surge threat on the west coast of Florida and the fact that this storm will have been a very strong hurricane in the Gulf of Mexico, a lot of water will be pushed toward the west coast of Florida. And the acceleration of the storm as it approaches, as you can see, its forward motion accelerates. I do think for a short period of time there is going to be a lot of storm surge affecting anywhere to the south of where this storm makes landfall. So if it makes landfall north of Tampa Bay is going to be inundated. If it makes landfall south of Tampa Bay will be fine because the counterclockwise circulation will push the water offshore. Anyway, again, if you're in this cone of uncertainty, likely later today a hurricane watch will be issued. And it says that here on the public advisory, hurricane and storm surge watches will likely be required for portions of Florida today. And I would anticipate it would be anywhere in that white cone area from Fish Creek down to Naples. But again, the center of this cone is where you really want to be, sorry about that, of most concern, which is somewhere from Homosassa Springs down to potentially Fort Myers, Florida. Tampa Bay, if you live in the Tampa Bay area, you need to start making preparations now. The intensity of this storm is a little tricky, and it says it has a lot of complexities. This is the National Hurricane Center's discussion, where they kind of give you the inside scoop as to what's happening. So I'll just read this to you. I'm not a meteorologist, but I understand some of this, and we'll show you on a map what they're talking about here. It says the intensity forecast has a lot of complexities. It says, while the cyclone is going to be in a favorable environment through about 60 hours, it will encounter strong shear and dry air entrainment after that time. And third, the proximity of a frontal system over the northern Gulf of Mexico and Florida suggests the possibility that Milton will undergo extratropical transition at some point during the forecast period. And that's good and bad, because it's good because it won't be deriving its strength from the warm waters of the Gulf of Mexico, and thus it can't be a Category 4 or 5 storm at that point. It'll be deriving its energy from the westerlies and the normal frontal systems that go across the United States, but that has its own energy as well. And the shear that we're going to show you here, that can create other problems like tornadoes, etc. I mean, we do tornado videos on this channel all the time. If the shear is high, that's bad for tropical development, but it's conducive to severe weather. So, the extratropical transition here has its pros and cons. Let's look, though, at the shear forecast, and you can see The storm right now is in a low shear environment, therefore it's expected to strengthen rapidly. And so that blue and white area in the southern Gulf of Mexico, this should become a very strong hurricane. But as we progress this forward, it's going to move into that red shaded area, which is a high shear environment, and that is not conducive to development. And so by the time it reaches the Florida Peninsula, the center of the storm is going to be potentially torn apart by this as it transitions into more of a frontal system and a low pressure system that's connected to a frontal system rather than a tropical system. So again, that has pros and cons. The good news is it should not be a strengthening tropical system as it approaches the state of Florida, meaning it will be in a weakening phase from a wind standpoint and as well as from an organization standpoint. So don't be surprised if you see an extremely strong, potentially Cat 5 hurricane Tuesday, but by the time it makes landfall, the storm starts to get torn apart. That's consistent with the model intensity guidance. This is from tropicaltidbits.com, Levi Cowan. I have a link to his website if you really want to get specific as to some of the meteorological information related to the storm. But again, looking at this, you do see a potential Cat 5 hurricane in 48 hours, but at around 84 to 96 hours near landfall, you can see it's a weakening storm. So Cat 3 to Cat 1 intensity is more likely upon landfall. Let's look at some of the tracks, though. The National Hurricane Center, these are all hurricane tracks. They're not National Hurricane Center forecasts, but they're all hurricane models, show the storm making landfall just north of Tampa Bay all the way down to the Naples area. But let's look at some of the actual models. These are hurricane models. This is HAFS A. This is made by the National Hurricane Center, this model. So as you can see this is today, it becomes a pretty strong hurricane pretty rapidly. I mean, if you look at this is by Tuesday, it shows 934 millibars. That's Cat 4 status. And look at how nice and symmetrical it is with a nice well-defined eye. But again, this is in the South Gulf of Mexico. As we move this forward, it even gets stronger. 911 millibars is a Cat 5 hurricane by Wednesday. This is according to the HAFS A model. Very, very strong, 908. Then it starts to weaken, and you can see it's 947 millibars by Thursday. So you can see this model has the storm way off the coast of Florida by Thursday when the National Hurricane Center's official forecast has it making landfall late on Wednesday. So there is some discrepancy there as to when this might make landfall. It might be late Wednesday, but it might not be till Thursday. But if you're looking at this, I mean, look, the storm looks like it's been completely decimated by the time it's approaching the Tampa Bay area or north of Tampa Bay with 955 millibars instead of 90 something earlier in this model run. But doesn't look like there's any storm activity to the south, so that dry air is coming in from the south and being wrapped into the storm. And it doesn't even really look like a hurricane upon landfall according to this National Hurricane Center model. Let's look at the HWRF model. This one keeps it fairly well organized upon landfall, so it doesn't get torn apart by the wind shear. It does have it to about 929 millibars as its maximum intensity, which would be about Category 4 status. This would be on Wednesday. And then approaching the coast, still fairly organized around the Tampa Bay area at 947 millibars, which is a pretty strong hurricane. So the HAFS A from the National Hurricane Center shows a hurricane that is really getting torn apart on landfall. This model is showing a hurricane that is small but retains some of its power and its tropical characteristics upon landfall. So really, at the end of the day, we don't know exactly what's going to happen, but we do know it's going to be a weakening storm upon landfall, but it might be weakening from a Category 5, so it's still going to be strong. And a lot of the ocean water that's pushed along the shore and creating the storm surge will have already been pushed there while it was a Category 5. That's what happened in Katrina. I mean, it was a Category 3, also weakening upon landfall, but it caused devastating floods in the Biloxi area because it had been a Category 5 for a while and it pushed a lot of water up and didn't need to be a Category 5 upon landfall to create a pretty serious storm surge threat. So I think there's going to be a pretty bad storm surge threat anywhere south of the storm all the way along the Florida west coast. And So even if it makes landfall where it's supposed to here in the Tampa Bay area, if you're in the Naples, Port Charlotte area, Fort Myers area, I mean, if you're along the coast, you need to prepare as if there's going to be inland flooding. And in another video, I will do the storm. When we get closer to landfall, I'll pull up the National Hurricane Center maps and storm surge maps in this area once we have a better idea of where the center is going to make landfall. Because north of the center, we really don't have a storm surge threat. Counterclockwise circulation, the wind blowing offshore pushes the water offshore. But to the south of where the center makes landfall is where we're going to have the largest storm surge threat. Bottom line, if you live on the west coast of Florida, today is the day to start getting prepared. You have until probably Wednesday or Thursday before this makes landfall. I don't think this is going to be a catastrophe, but it is going to be a significant hurricane moving quickly through the state of Florida later this week. Thank you for tuning in. Please share this video and like it and subscribe if you can with anybody who you think might benefit from this information. But it's time to get prepared right now. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great afternoon, and I will do another video as it warrants. Thank you.